been lucky enough to have made an introduction for Joe now sort of multiple times. But the last time we did it, I'm going to be super brief, is at AJMC, where Joe and his extraordinary body of work was honored in what was probably a 7-hour symposium in a room filled with people who were Joe fans, Joe friends, and Joe colleagues. And it was truly an extraordinary experience to sit in the back of that room, mostly, other than my brief invited speaking role, and watch people immerse themselves in a day's worth of Joe's work, and to realize that a day's worth of presentations of Joe's work was barely scratching the surface. There are a few scholars who have done what you have done. There are a few faculty members who have accomplished as much as you've accomplished. But truthfully, there are a few friends to the school who have done as much and meant as much to this institution. And even though I've been here a little speck of sand compared to your investment of time and resources, it's impossible not to recognize your influence on the school. And I'm going to stop speaking now other than to say thank you for doing this. Glad to see all of you here today, and we look forward to today's very brief snapshot, relatively speaking, of an extraordinary body of work. So thank you, Joe, and thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. Your support and generosity and kindness to me has been overwhelming. At that AEJMC, she made a couple of speeches that almost brought me to tears. And, because I mean, they were just really fantastic. I want to thank her. I want to just mention that in the year 2000, that was 15 years ago, everybody thought the IJBC was a joke, except for Jeff Cowan, who thought that it had merit. And he set up a meeting between me and Marty Kaplan to explain to Marty what the IJPC was, and in about 30 seconds, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, he said, let's make it a project of the Norman Lear Center. I have to understand how important that was. I used to go back to AEJMC and other conferences to try to tell them about the image of the journalist in popular culture, and nobody would really pay much attention to it. But when I said I was a project of the Norman Lear Center, suddenly they took me seriously. Marty's been a colleague for 15 years, a friend. He's been a supporter of IJPC, and I just want to publicly say, without you, I'm not sure I'd be here today doing this. Thank you. I'm going to get this out of the way real quick with a medical update so we don't worry about that. As some of you, or many of you may know, I had an emergency angioplasty 11 days ago. I was doing a deposition, and I guess maybe that had something to do with it. I don't think so. I was brilliant, as usual. But we took a break, and suddenly I had these incredible chest pains. Now, I had a stent put in 10 years ago. No pain at all. So this was a brand new thing to me. Luckily, Good Sam, where my heart doctor is, was a half a mile away, so they drove me there, although I did insist like an idiot to finish the deposition. And they kept asking me, if you look at the transcript, it's funny, they say, are you sure you're well enough to give us answers to this? Like, yeah, go ahead, just answer. Just ask me the questions. Last Thursday, I went to see the heart doctor, and he said, everything looks great. It was a fluke. We don't know why it happened. It was a small artery that just clogged up. And don't see me for 6 months. And when a heart doctor says, don't see me for 6 months, you know that's a good thing. So I'm back. My stamina still isn't good, but as the doctor said, what does that mean? He said, you're only doing 20 entries to your database instead of 50? And actually, that's exactly what I was doing. So I guess my definition of stamina is not the same as most. What I'm going to do today is I have a 10-minute written presentation, because if I do it improvised, I'll talk till 5 p.m. And then I'm going to show you a 22-minute video that I think you'll really enjoy. And then after that, I have some books. And the University of Illinois Press, which published this book, thinks it's so prestigious to publish with the University of Illinois Press that they don't want to sell books. I called them and I said, I'm doing a book signing. Could you please talk to the USC bookstore and get some books here? And they said, no, we don't do that. But you can buy them at your author's discount, and we don't care what you do with them. So essentially, that's what I did. I bought some books, and if you want them signed, I think it's a great book, so I think you'll enjoy reading it. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you. The question I'm always asked is why study the image of the journalist in popular culture? The main reasons are simple. First, journalism itself is supposed to provide us with the stories and information we need in order to govern ourselves. Second, journalists have been ubiquitous characters in popular culture, and those characters are likely to shape people's impressions of the news media at least as much, if not more, than the actual press does. And third, popular culture is a powerful tool for thinking about what journalism is and should be. There were three main reasons Matt Ehrlich, I wrote the book with Matt Ehrlich, he's a University of Illinois professor of journalism, terrific guy. And I wanted to write Heroes and Scoundrels, the image of the journalist in popular culture. The first reason was to give the image of the journalist in popular culture an academic home in journalism studies. When I first started researching the subject 25 years ago, most academics didn't consider it a valid field of study. Only a few had written on the subject, mostly on the image of the journalist in films. Today, everything has changed. There is worldwide interest in the image of the journalist in popular culture. We have 350 IJPC associates representing almost every academic institution in the world. There are dozens of classes using IJPC materials, and we have a peer review journal, the IJPC Journal. The IJPC website and the IJPC database with more than 86,000 entries on the journalist in film, television, novels, video games, comics, and every aspect of popular culture are now considered the worldwide resources on this subject. But Matt and I wanted to place the IJPC firmly inside a more established discipline, journalism studies. So we structured the book using principles of that discipline. Chapter on history, professionalism, difference, power, image, war, and the future. Showing how IJPC research fits neatly into journalism studies was the principal goal in writing the book. The other goal was to show the incredible diversity and range of the image of the journalist in all aspects of popular culture. Little had been written on the image of the journalist in television, or radio, or novels, short stories and plays, Broadway musicals, video games, comics, commercials, and the like. We were determined to show the range of popular culture involved. Although we wrote the book in 9 months, it would have been impossible to do without the IJPC database and research I have been doing for the last 25 years. A third goal was to make Heroes and Scoundrels a multimedia project. We believe it wasn't enough just to write the book, summing up what we discovered to 2015. We felt we needed a website to continuously update the material. So the Heroes and Scoundrels website, available on the IJPC website in a special section, is now a reality with hundreds of links and special articles organized by the chapters in the book. I try to update at least once a week. We also felt, and this is the closest thing to my heart, that a video component was absolutely necessary to supplement the text. So we created a 40-hour video companion to the book. I went through more than 8,000 hours of video to find the clips we felt would best augment the text. Since I had no access to an editor, I decided to do the rough cut by myself on Adobe Premiere, and it was one of the best experiences I've had in years. For most of my career, I wasn't allowed to even touch the editing equipment because of union rules. So to do the primary editing by myself was a freeing experience. I didn't have to tell someone what I wanted. I could just do it myself. For the final edit, things like color correction, sync control, audio levels, and special effects, I decided to work with a real editor, Megan Chow. And by summer's end, after 2 years of work, the 40-hour video was completed and ready for distribution. We fashioned the video to replicate the book by using writing on the screen, and voiceovers set up more than 350 excerpts from films, TV programs, Broadway plays, and video games. To give you an idea of the spirit of the book and the video, I put together a 22-minute video of brief excerpts, just little excerpts from the major excerpts on the video. After we screen it, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the IJPC or the book, and we do have copies of the book that I will be delighted to sign for you since I have to pay for them. Okay, here we go.
Heroes and Scoundrels, The Image of the Journalist in Popular Culture by Matthew C. Ehrlich and Joe Saltzman. Popular culture provides unique insight into journalism. Hero and scoundrel, delightful and despicable, public servant and public menace. That is the image of the journalist that popular culture gives us. Pop culture routinely makes the press matter, showing good journalism saving the day and bad journalism wreaking pain and havoc. It suggests that in spite of formidable obstacles and occasional wrenching change, the press and its noblest ideals will somehow endure. Therein lies the unseen power of journalism's popular image, and that is why it is necessary that we continue to study and care about the image of the journalist in popular culture.
Don't let anyone ever tell you what to print. Don't take advantage of your free press. Use it judiciously for your profession and your country. The press is good or evil according to the character of those who direct it.
Listen to me! Print that story, you're a dead man.
It's not just me anymore. You'd have to stop every newspaper in the country now, and you're not big enough for that job. People like you've tried it before, with bullets, prison, censorship. But as long as even one newspaper will print the truth, you're finished.
Hey! Hutchison? That noise, what's that racket?
That's the press, baby. The press. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
You mean be a traitor?
A traitor? A traitor to what?
Traitor to journalism. You're a journalist, Hildy.
A journalist? Now what does that mean? Peeking through keyholes? Chasing after fire engines?
Waking people up in the middle of the night, asking what they think of you to live.
And for what? So 1,000,000 shop girls and motormen's wives can get their jollies. And the next day, somebody wraps the front page around a dead mackerel.
Do you know what people use these for? They roll them up and they swat their puppies. For wetting on the rug, they spread them on the floor when they're painting the walls. They wrap fish in them. They shred them up and pack their two-bit china in them when they move, or else they pile up in the garage until an inspector declares them a fire hazard. But this also happens to be a couple of more things. It's got print on it that tells stories that hundreds of good men all over the world have broken their backs to get.
And a newspaper's job is to tell the truth. I'm sick of walking a tightrope. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, just because it might be bad for business. I want you to wake up in the night and see your own squashy, putrid little soul. I want you to know that every human being that works for you knows what a diseased hypocrite you are.
We take your money and we do your work because we're afraid to starve. Well, I'm not. I'm handing in my resignation right now.
I don't have all the answers. All I know is that I'm a newspaperman. And I've been one for 31 years, and that is all I know.
You know the results of the latest Gallup poll? Half the country never even heard of the word Watergate. Nobody gives a shit. You guys are probably pretty tired, right? Well, you should be. Go on home. Get a nice hot bath. Rest up 15 minutes. Then get your asses back in gear. We're under a lot of pressure, you know, and you put us there. Nothing's riding on this except the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of the press, and maybe the future of the country. Not that any of that matters. But if you guys fuck up again, I'm going to get mad.
Much bigger names than you have asked us who Deep Throat is, so
I don't think we'd revealed on a little tiny show like this one here.
you know what I think? I mean, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I don't think there is any such person as Deep Throat. I think y'all just made it up.
Yes, there is. Deep Throat.
Don't say it! He's trying to trick us! Let Metropolis know that Lane and Kit are the greatest writing team since, Woodward and Bernstein. And they can read about it in the Daily Planet.
On the other hand, I am the publisher of the Inquirer. As such, it's my duty, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's also my pleasure to see to it that decent, hard-working people in this community aren't robbed blind by a pack of money-mad pirates just because they haven't anybody to look after their interests.
Hold the presses. This, just in. By a curious quirk of fate,
We have the perfect story with which to launch our satellite news network tonight. It seems a small crisis is brewing in the South China Seas. I want full newspaper coverage. I want magazine stories. I want books. I want films. I want TV. I want radio. I want us on the air 24 hours a day. This is our moment. And 1 billion people around this planet will watch it, hear it, and read about it from the Carver Media Group. There's no news like bad news.
I'm looking at you. I'm looking, and I can see a reporter who's about to tell me he has a hunch. I've been checking on some things. Do you know my opinion of reporters who have hunches?
I interviewed this witness who said he saw a gun. I don't think he saw a gun.
I can't fart loud enough to express my opinion.
I've been in this news game 40 years, man and boy. And I got where I am with guts, compassion, elbow grease, and something you're sadly lacking in, son.
Humility?
No, not humility. You got value in humility. Aggression, confidence. That's the ticket.
In my day, you did what your editor told you to do, and you liked it.
Those were the days. You're not afraid of me, are you?
No.
Ah, too bad. You did some good reporting on this, so I'm going to do you a favor.
What?
I'm not going to embarrass you by printing this. Redo it.
Our job is to report the news, not to manufacture it.
Fuck you, Gus.
Nice.
What have we got?
It's wrong.
Given the information we had at the time, the story's right.
Yeah, but it's not right. I got a cop, I got a quote. It's wrong.
Not for today, it's not. Tomorrow, it's wrong. We only have to be right for a day.
There shouldn't be semantics. There shouldn't be money. People will read this, Alicia, and they'll believe us.
For the Sun, they'll take us with a grain of salt. We'll run yours tomorrow.
No, not tomorrow. Right fucking now, today.
Jesus Christ, don't you have any idea how much shit we're about to eat? Every competitor we ever took a shot at, they're gonna pounce, and they should. Because we blew it, Caitlin. He handed us fiction after fiction, and we printed them all as fact.
Where did you learn the newspaper business? Working for a newspaper, and not sitting with your nose in a book at some cockamamie university.
You switched those assignment slips, didn't you?
Well, I thought reporters always did things like that. At least they do in the movies. And besides, it says right in my textbook on journalism that a newspaper man or woman must stop at nothing to get news. And if she ever intends to impress the editor, she must be willing to do much more than just what the assignment calls for. So there.
Where are you from, my good woman?
I'm Hot News Marge of the Gazette.
What? A tabloid reporter?
Yeah.
You wait here.
Oh, but I want to go with you.
This rat hole is no place for a woman.
But I'm a newspaper man.
Well, you just sit quiet and maybe nobody will notice it.
Listen, you great big wonderful genius of a newspaper man. You came down here to shoot some life into this darn paper, didn't you? Well, the whole town's curious about John Doe, and boom, just like that, you're going to bury him. There's enough circulation in that man to start a shortage in the ink market.
And what man?
John Doe.
What John Doe?
I, John Doe, the one I made up.
Golly, Miss Lane, how come you get all the great stories?
A good reporter doesn't get great stories, Jimmy.
Good reporter
Makes them great.
Chief, here's that story in Eastside murder case. The way I see it, it's a banner headline, front page, maybe no picture.
There's only one P in rapist.
Chief, I spent a week on the docks with rats and frizzed hair exposing the biggest gun smuggling ring to hit this town in 10 years, and what makes the front page? Some sprouty, new-age, granola-crunching fluff piece on angels. What's next? Interviews with Bigfoot?
It stinks. I mean, I don't know, I just came with a bad feeling. It feels...
Feels?
Bogus.
It feels?
Yeah.
I mean, are you being paid to investigate your feelings? I mean, just give me the facts, Janine.
People back home wouldn't buy a ring if they knew it cost someone else their hand. I can't write that story until I get facts that can be verified, which is to say, until I find someone who will go on record. So if that is not you, and you're not really gonna help me, and we're not really gonna screw, then why don't you get the fuck out of my face?
I'm gonna be late to meet someone. Who? Like a date? Friend? Ah, the mysterious fuck buddy who you get all of your stories from? Lighten up. I was just teasing. Not that I would judge. We've all done it. I used to suck, screw, and jerk anything that moved just to get a story.
I mean, there's a lot of information in here, Heather, that is off the record.
You never said anything about off the record.
I presumed anything said while I was inside you was privileged.
If you wanted to talk on a plane or at a movie or over dinner, that would have been fine. But you wanted to fuck. That's fine by me.
Keeler, I want a retraction of that item.
You mean that little boost I gave you in today's column?
I mean this cheap attack you made against a friend of mine.
Why, Bob, that's publicity. I usually get a little something for that kind of stuff.
That's okay with me. All right, Keeler, put that in your column.
You see, I've been reading your chatter for a long time, and I think everything that you write is great.
Oh, thanks.
Do you ever read my stuff?
Yeah?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, honest now. Just what do you think of it?
Well, now that you ask me, I put it in about the same class as collecting garbage.
A press agent eats a columnist dirt and is expected to call it manna.
But don't you help columnists by furnishing them with items?
Sure. A columnist can't do without us, except our good and great friend JJ forgets to mention that. You see, we furnish him with items.
What, some cheap, gruesome gags?
You print them, don't you?
Yes, with your clients' names attached. That's the only reason the poor slobs pay you, to see their names in my column all over the world. Now I make it out you're doing me a favor?
I didn't say it.
The day I can't get along without a press agent's handouts, I'll close up shop and move to Alaska lock, stock, and barrel.
And then we both grab for the gun. And get that straight, we both grab for it. And then?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reach for the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun, oh yes, they both reach for the gun, for the gun. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reach for the gun, 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 the gun.
Thought of that. Just ignore the quill. Then of course you're no ordinary boy of 12, are you? 14. The story's legend. Do you think it was the trauma of your past that made you so keen to enter such a dangerous tournament?
No, I didn't enter.
Of course you didn't. Everyone loves a rebel, Harry. Scratch that last.
You mind your kiss in the shadow? The kid, put the hat in there.
Huh?
His hat, stick it in. People like to see the dead guy's hat. Thanks, boys.
You gotta get close, Rich. You get the truth. You get too close, you die.
In newspaper business.
What do you mean I am the newspaper business? I'm news. I disappear for a week and all America boils. Millions of people out there waiting for me, praying for me. I'm humble at the very thought of it. But betting weight, I'm the only color in the lives of the masses. I'm a public benefactor.
You're a public enemy. You're a fake and a fraud. And if I can ever expose you, I will.
It's death coming to London. Yes, they're coming here now. You can hear the bombs falling on the streets and the homes. Don't tune me out. Hang on a while. This is a big story, and you're part of it. It's too late to do anything here now except stand in the dark and let them come. It's as if the lights were all out everywhere, except in America. Keep those lights burning. Cover them with steel. Ring them with guns. Build a canopy of battleships and bombing planes around them. Hello, America. Hang on to your lights. They're the only lights left in the world.
What's in it?
Oh, nothing much. You just won the Pulitzer Prize, that's all.
Well, I'll be darned.
I regret to inform you, Mr. Pyle, you are no longer a newspaper man. You are now a distinguished journalist.
Because I wanted to do what I could so the people back home would know a little better what war is about. I'm making no dough, Captain Nelson. And I may wind up with a bullet through my typewriter. I know it isn't easy. I didn't come out here expecting it to be easy. Then you're not fighting this war from behind a desk, are you? No. Well, I'm not writing it from behind one either.
What are you going to say in that newspaper of yours? If I say what I feel, I may be out of a job.
He'll always give you one. Probably do you more good with a typewriter.
I have never thought of myself as a correspondent. I am just a reporter. I offer no point of view, I take no action, I don't get involved. I just report what I see.
But you must have an opinion.
Even an opinion is a form of action.
I know, I'm sacrilegious, but being that close to death, being that alive, it's completely addictive. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying.
This room is littered with newspaper reporters. And as usual, they are very, very glad to have me with them. You may be able to read their stories within 2 days after this broadcast.
I believe that in our fast-moving computer age, it is the medium of television that joins together the global community. And it is the television journalist who serves as messenger, bringing the world into our homes and our homes into the world. It has always been my dream to become such a messenger.
None of you experts stop to check the teleprompter to see if my pages were in order. Why not? I'll tell you why not, because you're nothing but stupid, lazy, inconsiderate morons who should be hired on a bench. None of you! This is serious primetime news, folks. Serious journalism.
It's getting close.
You don't understand
10,
that yet?
9,
Wrong damn
8.
business.
Can she pull out of it? Jessica, coming up from commercial in 5, 4, 3.
In Scandinavia.
What a feeling having you inside my head.
Yeah, it was an unusual place to be.
It's like indescribable. You knew just when to feed me the next line. You knew the second before I needed it. There was like a rhythm we got into. It was like great sex.
You know what? You got spunk.
Well,
I hate spunk.
I'm going to have to ask you to stop that.
I'm going to get you to stop that.
Hey, this time I mean it.
Hey, this time I mean it.
Knock it off!
Knock it off!
My friends!
Oh, I knew we should have gotten Barbara Walter.
Unrespected gentleman!
Let me remind you about something, Murphy. This is a job, not make-believe. We're not doing the Mary Tyler Moore show here. There's no audience laughing at every cute little thing you say. This is the real world. So when I tell you you're doing a story, you don't just say, "Oh, Mr. Grant, I don't want to." You do it.
All you pink-nosed little snow bunnies. Eric, can you see I'm doing the news? Read it. All right.
Channel 4 News with 5-time Emmy Award-winning anchor Ron Burgundy, Chamkine Sports, Rick Tamlin Weather, and your reporter in the field, Brian Fantana. It's Channel 4 News at 6 o'clock.
Safe abortions have always been available to the rich, Dan. You simply want to deny them to the poor, and if you succeed, poor women will be forced to get them anyway. They'll be forced back into the alleys with hangers, plungers, and vacuum cleaners, risking death or mutilation. But you'd like that, wouldn't you, Dan? You sadistic, elitist, sexist, racist, anti-humanist pig.
Jane, you ignorant, misguided slut. Now to Kermit the Frog with another fast-breaking news story.
Hi all, this is Kermit the Frog of Sesame Street News, and today I am standing at the base of the tower where the Princess Rapunzel is being held prisoner by the Wicked Witch.
Well, Hurricane Norman is beginning to pound Quahog. We now go live to Asian reporter Trisha Takanawa for a look at how locals are dealing with the imminent disaster. Trisha?
Diane, I'm hearing.
Thank you, Trisha.
This is Media Break. You give us 3 minutes, and we'll give you the world.
So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
Mike! Try Mr. Wallace. We work in the same corporation doesn't mean we work in the same profession. Now, what are you going to do now? You're going to finesse me, lawyer me some more? I've been in this profession 50 fucking years. You and the people you work for are destroying the most respected, the highest rated, the most profitable show on this network.
We're in show business, baby. Make them laugh, make them cry, make them buy and buy.
And what does winning look like to you?
Reclaiming the fourth estate. Reclaiming journalism as an honorable profession. A nightly newscast that informs a debate worthy of a great nation. Civility, respect, and a return to what's important. The death of bitchiness, the death of gossip and voyeurism. Speaking truth to stupid. No demographic sweet spot, a place where we all come together.
This thing, this box you're watching me on, it's just an appliance, really. But unlike any other in your home or in history. It can bring laughter and learning. But sometimes it can move so fast that the commitment to truth can be compromised in the race for the ratings. We have to ensure that the truth, the whole truth, will always be part of our process.
But I get tired of this constant stomachache every time you do a controversial subject.
It's the price you have to pay, Bill. Goes with the job.
If this instrument can teach, it can illuminate, damn it, it can inspire.
But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it towards those ends. Otherwise, it is merely wires and lights in a box. Good night, and good luck.
There are 39 and a half more hours. I thought
we're not busy.
Very briefly, I would just say that how we come up, I have a template we use pretty much for figuring out whether a journalist is a hero or a scoundrel, a villain. And the way that seems to work best, there are exceptions to the rule, but generally, if a reporter is working in the public interest, they can do almost anything. They can lie, they can cheat, they can hurt people, they can do whatever is necessary, but if the final result is to expose corruption, or solve a crime, or save an innocent, then they're pretty much heroic. The public pretty much considers them a hero. If, however, they use the precious commodity of the news media for their own personal gain, political gain, economic gain, personal gain from the news media, then they are a villain. And the only thing left for them in most popular culture is death, or at the end saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm quitting my job, I'll never do this again." And that's pretty well. Another easy way to know if the reporter is going to be heroic is if you look at the credits, and in the journalist is in the top 5 roles, played by a really familiar actor, someone you know, someone you're familiar with. It's usually an heroic portrait. If, however, they're way down the list, played by somebody you don't even know, or their build is reporter number 1, anonymous reporter, reporter number 3, then they're usually not very nice. They're usually doing bad things. There are all kinds of exceptions to that rule, but that's basically what you can do. So if you have any questions about the book or about anything, I'll be happy to answer. Yeah, Richard?
How'd you get all the permissions? I mean, this stuff is worth a fortune.
When I first started this in the year 2000, the IJPC, we sat down with the legal counsel, USC legal counsel, and they came up with the club concept, which is if you organize a group of people, we call it the IJPC Associates, and they are members of this group. you can give them any video collection you create if they only use it for private use, which includes classroom use, or for research. They cannot screen it and charge money. They cannot use it to make any money. And that's what we've been doing for 15 years. And I haven't had any trouble. I did give a speech for the Columbia, pardon the expression, Graduate School of Journalism Alumni Association in Southern California. And I showed a clip, I think a 10-minute clip. And this guy who was obviously from New York, he had one of those New York coats on, he looked very distinguished, came up, and he was the legal counsel for the motion picture industry. And he just wanted to see my face when he gave me the card. And I looked at it, I didn't know what was going on, but he said, no, you're doing it right, no problem. So I can get away with it as long as I don't sell it, as long as I don't distribute it outside of this little 350 group IJPC. That's that one. But I could never afford these.
No one could.
And now that corporations own all the movie studios, they don't really want any exceptions. They set the rule, you can't use it, and you can't negotiate. They're not interested. You're too small potatoes. So you really can't get the rights to any of this. Yeah.
Are you distributing this 40, I mean, what you said are 40 hours, is it on a DVD or?
No, Megan and I had long discussions, and we talked to Library of Congress people, we talked to a lot of people, and I hate to tell you this, but DVD technology is dead. So what I did was I put this all on MP4 files. And it's wonderful because they don't take up that much room. So what I'm doing with IJPC Associates, they are buying essentially a 1 terabyte hard drive. And on this 1 terabyte hard drive, I put all the IJPC collections, which there's 10 of them now, and the 40-hour video. And that takes up about 300 gigabytes. So they not only get all of this material, but then they get 700 gigabytes to use for their own storage. And I've sent them to China, Texas, Illinois, New York. We've been distributing all over the country, but they have to be a member, all over the world, but they have to be a member of the IJPC, or else I can't do it. The book I don't sell. You buy the book on Amazon or wherever they want to buy it. But they can only get the video through the IJPC.
So I have a bunch of questions, so interesting. So my first question is, some of the earliest clips you showed were from the 1930s. And so I'm wondering, from the 1930s to 2015, what are some of the trends or things that you noted in your analysis over time?
Well, there's always, every generation thinks that the image of the press is the worst. But my research, which goes back seriously to the beginnings of recorded history, we've done a lot of work with Greek and Roman materials and back to the Sumerian culture, the image hasn't changed at all. People want the information. They love the information, but they usually hate the people who give it to them. And when you talk about, oh, today it's the paparazzi and it's tabloid journalism, the best example I have is 1931 was a film called 5-Star Final. I had a bit of a clip there, in which it's the worst portrait of a newspaper I've ever seen in my life. I mean, one of the reporters dresses up as a minister to get information and a picture from somebody. They cause a couple to commit suicide, and the reporter breaks into the apartment and sees their bodies on the floor and shoots pictures and calls the city desk without ever calling the police. At the end, the daughter comes in with a gun and threatens them, and the publisher behaves just horribly. Edward G. Robinson, throughout the film, is washing his hands, symbolically trying to get the dirt and the filth off his hands. He finally resigns at the end, throwing a paperweight through the publisher's thing. And the last shot of that film is a newspaper in the gutter being swept, all this kind of crap being swept all over until it's all black. I've never seen a modern portrait of a newspaper that bad. And that was in the that was a Broadway play in 1928 and a film in 1931. So the image really hasn't changed. The problem today is that in the 30s and the 40s, no matter how rough the portrait was, they were written by former newspaper people, primarily. And these people had a very, just an affection for the newspaper man, an affection for newspapers. And even if they showed terrible things, they really, you could see the affection coming through, even in the front page. The front page was considered a great newspaper film, but when you look at it today, these newspaper reporters are doing terrible things. They forced this prostitute to jump out the window. They yell it, they make up stories, they make up facts. In fact, there's shot after shot of them panning the reporters making up facts, making up stories. And so when we look at that from an ethical standpoint, we say this is the worst journalism we've ever seen. But for years, that film was considered the most fun, the greatest portrait of journalists. So I think the problem today is a lot of people making films don't know journalism at all. All they know is the paparazzi and the people chasing them to do celebrity stories. And they put that into their movies. The one thing I've explored that I'm very proud of because it's so original is the anonymous journalist. What I've done is a study of all the journalists who appear in films and television, on films and television shows that have nothing to do with journalism. You've seen them. You'll be watching a movie and suddenly a crowd of journalists are running after a celebrity or the hero of the film. And that really, people don't like that. People identify with the actor and not with these hordes of journalists pushing their cameras and their microphones into people's face. So that, I think, is something that most people hate about journalism. When you talk about people, why they hate journalists, it's always the paparazzi and these people. And there's enough in real life, like the O.J. Simpson trial and trials like that, where you see the real journalists doing the same things that verify it in the mind of the audience. And also broadcast journalists. TV journalists have been treated the worst in the history of popular culture. It's the most vicious portrait of journalists are usually television journalists. And the reason for that, I believe, is that people think they know television journalists because they see them on the air. They'll see the anchor and they'll feel they know them, and you can't satirize anything unless you have some understanding of who these people are. But if you look at all the portraits of journalists in film history, television history, the broadcast journalist is the worst. I mean, the image is terrible. Yeah.
So I noticed in this clip there wasn't really any journalists of color in this video, and I think that's a representation of the actual media because there isn't many people of color. In your study, why have you found that that is?
Well, the movies do reflect real life. In the 60s, for example, if you weren't a white male, you didn't work. Women got terrible treatment. People of color were non-existent. There wasn't a portrait of a black, an African-American journalist until Sidney Poitier in the Bedford incident, which is, I think, the late 70s or in the late 60s or 70s, and he gets blown up by an atomic bomb. He was a photojournalist in that film. In television, very few black journalists. There were a lot of black journalists in what they call race films. I don't know if the younger people in the room are familiar with race films, but in the 30s and 40s and 50s and in the 20s, you would have films made by African Americans for just the African American audience. Nobody else saw them. Same with records. Some of the greatest jazz artists, Billie Holiday, Bessie Smith, they didn't really go to the big labels. They had these race labels, and so that was current in most of the 20th century. So what you have is a film like Mystery and Swing, which is a black reporter, a black editor, black everybody, and they had films like that. But in the mainstream movies and TV, none. Denzel Washington was a reporter in the Pelican Brief. There's a fantastic film called Living Large, which is on a black reporter who, to become well-known, becomes white, sees himself as becoming white. It's a very good film that few people know about. But there aren't many people of color represented in films until the 21st century, really. And even now, the blacks, the Asians, the Chicanos, Latinos are usually in crowds. They'll have one or two. Gordie Howe in Mary Tyler Moore was a weatherman, a black weatherman, very unusual for the 70s. And they kept referring to him in the show as a sportscaster. Kept saying, no, I'm the weatherman, to show that nobody really paid attention to an African American. He becomes famous in the series. After a couple of years, comes back as a network anchor and makes fun. And Ted Knight, there's a lot of funny stuff with him, but that's one of the few black characters in TV history who is a journalist. And when you look at them, there are very few. So people of color are really not represented in popular culture because they weren't represented in real life. And even today, you can read the statistics, people of color are still a minority in the newsrooms across the country. So this is just something that happens. Family Guy actually has a black weatherman, which I have in my 40-hour thing, Ollie, and they have the Asian reporter that we saw for about 1 second before the hurricane kicks her out of the picture. There's a film called Year of the Dragon, which is on an Asian reporter, and any Asian would hate it because it's a stereotypical a female journalist, broadcast journalist who sleeps with her source. Even here, I mean, sleeping with your source is just done in every film after film after film. Sleeping with someone in the newsroom, your colleagues, is fairly commonplace. But in the 40-hour thing, I tried to get every person of color I could find into the video, because I realize it's a major problem. It's a good point. Yeah.
Along those lines, if people of color are rendered invisible, why are there enough gay journalists that justified your subset of the image of the gay journalist?
Yeah. In the book, my favorite chapter in this book is the book on difference, because it's on female, the image of female journalists, the image of people of color, and the image of gay journalists. I wanted to do a study of it about 4 years ago, and there was nothing written on it. So I had to do two things. One, I had to go through my database and try to figure it out. But up until about 1990, it was very hard to figure out who were the gay journalists, because they were not pointed out as a gay journalist. So what I did was I went to gay experts, and I used their criteria. So for example, if you've ever seen a film like Laura, Clifton Webb plays a columnist who the gay community considers gay, but he's in love with Laura in the film, but he does have what the gay community told me were gay mannerisms. I mean, the first time he meets the detective, he's taking a bath, and he's very snarky, he's very sarcastic, and the gay community tells me we claim him. So in my survey of the gay journalists, we have many, many films for the first time labeling these people as gay journalists, but it's not me labeling them, it's the experts. There's a great professor, a gay professor, who was on my panel at AEJMC who helped me with that. Because I didn't want to make the decision myself, because we think of it in stereotypical terms, you know, acting feminine or whatnot, women dressed as men. There's a film, 1929, The Big News, in which the woman is ridiculed for being a lesbian. They don't call her a lesbian, but she's dressed as a man, and they make fun of her, and the gay community obviously considers her a gay person. There was a film in early 1990 called In and Out, in which for the first time a macho actor, Tom Selleck, who's more macho than Tom Selleck, big star even today with Blue Bloods, plays a gay reporter. And it was the first film where they admitted gay, and it was very popular. And then it was very easy, because there was no fear of being labeled gay. There are films with gay journalists that are some of them mostly for the gay audience. And again, it's the same way. I don't care if you're people of color, if you're gay, the stereotypes are all the same. All the idea of being the image of the journalist doesn't change. Even today, when the journalist is a blogger or in the internet, the same cliches occur, the same things happen. And sometimes some of the gay journalists in recent films, I'm shocked to see the stereotypical way they're treated. Personally, I'm not gay, but I can't believe it, and yet it's still being done. But there are some, England especially, on TV especially, it's amazing how television leads the way for people of color and also for gays. They treat them with great respect. There was a gay critic on Frasier for years, and he was treated with great respect, I think. They had one episode with him that was very moving on how he felt about himself. And so TV has been very kind to the gay community, and you can see a lot of great images of the journalists on television. Yeah.
I wondered if you could tell us about Superman's influence on you as a journalist, and also on you pursuing this project.
Well, the Daily Planet mythology is, to me, one of the greatest pieces of images of journalists, because they haven't changed. In 1939, when Clark Kent was developed, in 1940, when Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, Lois Lane were created, they were the 30s journalists, the image of the 30s journalists. You had the sob sister, the tough Lois Lane who would do anything she could do to be as good as the male. You had Clark Kent, the serious reporter serving the public good. You had Perry White, the hard-bitten editor. You had Jimmy Olsen, the cub reporter, later photographer. And if you follow them, year after year after year, the radio show, the serial, the 78 movies, the Lois and Clark TV series, Smallville, the Superman of recent vintage, Man of Steel, Return of Superman, whatever that was, and the new I don't know if you've watched Supergirl, a terrific series actually. That's out now, and Jimmy Olsen is a man of color. In the film Man of Steel, Perry White's a man of color. So they're doing interesting things, but the characters do not change. And I think what you were referring to is Clark Kent was the reason I went into journalism. Clark Kent and Hildy Johnson. I didn't realize Hildy Johnson was as bad as he was when I was a kid. I thought he was a great hero. And you find out that journalists aren't as bad as Hildy Johnson. They're not as good as Clark Kent. They're somewhere in the middle. But I think a lot of journalists of my era, I know my wife was a big Brenda Starr fan. That convinced her a woman could do the job. I think we did look at images and say, oh, I want to be one of those. And I love the Daily Planet mythology. Matt has written a wonderful piece on it. I've done a lot of writing on it because it's so consistent. I thought Smallville was brilliant at recreating the mythology. And it keeps going. Man of Steel I was very angry about because they violated some of the real points of the mythology, and that bothers me. But Supergirl seems to have brought it back. I think it was a pretty good series.
So I'm wondering if you could just talk about some of the other projects that other researchers have done out of your wonderful database. What are some of the things that people have explored with this amazing database that you have?
Well, for me, the greatest joy is seeing the international community respond to this. The international community, to be honest, is far more interested in this subject than the domestic market. Getting an American professor, academic to be interested in this is like pulling teeth, but to get people from Wales, Italy, India, Spain, Germany. One of the greatest joys I had was I got a call from a PhD candidate in Germany. She wanted to do her PhD thesis on the image of the journalist, and the only way her faculty would approve it if I were a member of the committee, to give it the validity of being a real academic field. I said, but I don't speak German. I don't know anything about German. And she said, that doesn't matter. They just want you on my committee. Would you do what I did? And she did the image of the journalist in German novels. And she sent me 500 German novels aping my database. I pressed a button and it's all in my database. Wow. And she's been a friend. Every couple of years she shows me something she has written. She came to AJMC once and we got to meet each other. But that to me is the best thing. There's a Brian McNair in England, didn't know anything about the subject. He saw the database, which we put online about 8 years ago, I think it was, and he called me up on email. They don't call, of course, anymore. Email saying, you know, I really would like to do something on it. What do you think? I said, and I encouraged him, and his book came out. It was very well received on the image of the journalist in popular culture. I think it's the image of journalists in films. That's the biggest problem I have. Everybody wants to do films. In my humble estimation, TV is much more influential. You had 10 years of Mary Tyler Moore, where she came into your house every week. Murphy Brown every week came into your house. You can watch TV. I scan about 100 hours a week. And there's a new show called The Player. And they have a little summary about the player, and there's no reason I should even look at it, but I scan this stuff, and I'm working on my database while I'm listening to it. I suddenly say, you're a journalist. Stop what I'm doing, look up. A journalist was captured by the bad guys. He saves her from a bomb going off. That's great stuff for me. I would have never known about it unless I had scanned the thing. So this is what I do to keep the database current, and then to see someone in Spain. I just got a wonderful email from a gentleman in Spain who wants to pursue the subject on the image of the Spanish journalist. Some guy in Spain, we're going to run his article actually, did a wonderful piece on Billy Wilder. He went into Billy Wilder's life as a journalist and showed how it was reflected in his films. I mean, he's in Spain. He's writing about an American subject. So that's what's been rewarding. Also going to AJMC and seeing all these people who I remember 10 years ago, who I had to literally, and I'm not exaggerating, it was like being a salesman. I would literally grab people and physically pull them to the Annenberg table to sit them down and try to get them interested. And many of those people went on to teach classes. Sammy Johnson of Trinity, who is on our IJBC journal board, she has taught a class in the image of the female journalist in popular culture now for about 6 years, all because she came to AJMC and we met. I mean, that's very rewarding. And if I could just get younger academics interested in this to carry on, and it's like pulling teeth. Their faculty wants them to do the more traditional communication, because communication scholars are, I think, a better group for me than the journalism scholars. Well, one interesting thing, I did the first study on public relations practitioners started including it. I gotta tell you all, public relations scholars are fantastic. They love this stuff. I have gotten more response from PR with the study I've done, more people use it in their class, more people write about it. I've got at least 10 people who are writing about it based on my original study. That's so rewarding, and that amazes me. Journalists don't seem to want to be involved with this. It drives me crazy. Yeah.
So what do you think the impact of seeing this image portrayed in film and television and comics and everything else on our opinion, on people's opinion of journalists?
Yeah, Pointer just interviewed me on it. We have a problem. It's mostly anecdotal. Kirsten, who I think was here, I think she left, she and I are trying to do a study based on her strict communication theory, social science theory, to show that it does actually have an effect. But it's very hard to do these studies, and nobody's done them yet. But there have been studies on lawyers, doctors, and children on the effect of the image as they watch. Wonderful studies on Sesame Street, hundreds of studies on Sesame Street. One of my former students did N is for News, the image of the journalist on Sesame Street. Fantastic paper because she could quote all of these studies that said this influenced children. All the images they see on Sesame Street have a profound influence on their lives. So it doesn't take much for us to say the image of the journalist on Sesame Street influences these kids because we have the documentation. And there's enough around so that besides anecdotes, we can pretty much say that these do influence the public. How much? Possible to say, but how many people do you know go to a newsroom and watch journalists work? How many show up at a TV newsroom and watch the process? Nobody I know, and yet they have such strong opinions about who journalists are, and when you ask them about it, they'll quote films, they'll quote TV shows, they'll quote something they've seen on live TV, like a couple of journalists on Fox yelling at each other or something. And that's pretty much their image. So it's real life, on real life television, it's real life in person, but I think it's mostly novels, television, and films and the other aspects. Video games. I see these kids playing video games with photojournalists usually as heroes or villains, and they're identifying with these people. I've seen it in person. I've watched them play and I see them identify with the characters. So it doesn't seem to me to be a big jump in faith to say it's influencing their image of the photojournalist or journalist in general. I thought you had something. Oh. Yeah, we should wrap up. One more.
In line with the previous question, I'm just wondering how you think this affects the international audience in terms of perceiving how this portrayal of journalists, of American journalists, affects the image of United States abroad in terms of politics or American society or culture in general that's related to the freedom of the press and democratic values.
That's a great question. What amazes me is how similar the image of the journalists in other countries are, especially Hong Kong and Bollywood. You can't watch a Bollywood film without seeing a journalist pop up, and he's usually a source of ridicule. The American film has really influenced, not my thought, studies have shown it really influenced the country, the world around us. In fact, I think probably our #1 reason for being is the film industry sometimes, because the world really loves our film industry. It does have a provocative influence. But it's amazing how if you look at the image of the journalist in Spain, written by Spanish people, the image of the journalist in England or India, it's practically the same, especially Hong Kong. And in my database, I have a lot of international films. When I first started, I was calling them foreign films. And I got a nasty letter from someone in Germany, I believe, who said, they're not foreign to us. So now I go English, non-English speaking, and I only include those in the database where they either have subtitles or they've been released in the United States. Otherwise, it would be impossible to find everything. But Bollywood interests me because there are so many journalists in the Bollywood films. Okay, well, thank you so much. If anybody wants to buy